Hi, Kathrina.
Hi, Aninha.
Nice to see you. Okay, we got all set up. There were a couple technical difficulties. Now we're online. And I'll just start by introducing you and reading your bio, and then I'll share a little bit about how I know you, and then we can jump in. So, Kathrina Kasha Peterson is a naturalist, an author, an artist, a teacher, and a healer. Her interest is in the body mind spirit connection and has its roots in her childhood as she assisted her mother in natural healing in the Philippines. She also spent the decade of her 20s studying closely with elder teachers in the monasteries in Asia. She has a graduate degree in East West psychology and holds numerous program certificates in multiple modalities, addressing human development from multiple perspectives. In addition to her work with humans, she communicates with animals and is an earth worker. And I'll just share how I know you. I'm gonna maybe hide my self view. There we go. Um, so we're kind of village. We both live in the same little tiny town area, and I first met you at our friend's wedding, and I remember talking to you at least for an hour straight, and just being like, "Oh my God, who is this woman?" Because you had so much understanding of like it says in your bio, so many different perspectives and not just like a little bit here, a little bit there, like these deep. I remember, like, whoa, the psychology line, oh, the energy line, oh, the shamanic line, and the Feldenkrais and the body, and so integrated and so articulate. And I was just, okay, this is someone I want to know. So I really just bow down to all the studying you've done and all the healing work you've done to integrate it and make it your own. And it's very profound.
Thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
for the acknowledgement and to be seen by you. Thank
Oh,
you. Yeah.
definitely. Yeah. And I don't know much about your assisting your mother in the Philippines, so that's new to me, and I'd love to hear if you want to share. But I want to name
Yeah.
one other thing. So I also know you because I did go to a session with you, and I think one of my children, maybe both, went to a session with you. So I have direct experience of what this looks like in action, and was very taken by it's. I know there's a book called this, but I'm not referring to that. The anatomy of maybe I don't know what you call it, energy anatomy, but you have this very clear understanding of the layers that we exist in and beyond physical and beyond the emotional and beyond the mental, which is usually kind of how far we get, maybe the soul. So just um, speaking to that experience of you, of like, oh, you have some spiritual technology that's very powerful and grounded in study. So there was that. And then the last thing, I know you threw dance, so it was just kind of fun. You on the dance floor.
That's right. Ooh.
And the rare times I am on Facebook, not so much anymore, but I've seen you just be very transparent about your own process, very available to be of service, and very willing to be kind of spontaneous and dance and share. And so I just wanted to share how I know you and kind of ground the relationship and the conversation. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, in terms of where to start, as I said to you before we spoke, there's a really open ended feeling today. Sometimes I have a very specific kind of place that I'm curious about. As always, I'm always interested in how we hold the world and kind of more nonlinear ways of perceiving and behaving and experiencing, and how do we weave those in a way that we might be some kind of hollow bones, some kind of service, or at least in the beingness of what we're meant to be, if not in the doingness. So, so there's that thread. And then today, the ancestors showed up very strong and tending the ancestors. So if that's in your field lately, that's alive. And then just kind of wherever, and you're traveling the country
I'm
and
clever.
you're allowing yourself to be informed by things other than the news, direct experience. So that is completely interesting and open to conversation on that. So I'll just kind of let you start however you'd like to. With all that being said, I know
Okay.
I know you're very intuitive, so you can drop in and feel what wants to be said. If you want more directed questions, I'm happy to, but I just want to open the field.
um, so perhaps it's good to start where what my history with my mother healing. Yeah.
Wonderful.
So I come from a family that's my mother's from the Philippines, and the Philippine culture, we have traditional healers, shamans. Our belief system is an amalgam and an intersection, syncreticness of Catholicism, but also animism. So I grew up going to Catholic school, and we also made offerings to our ancestors. We listened to the different elementals in the fields. So can you hear me okay?
So it's got a little reverberation, but I hear you.
Okay, good. I'll maybe put a little bit closer. So I grew up in a house that was quite magical. It was an 8-sided house, which, was just special in its own right. But we also had a lot of ghosts in my house, a lot of spirits in my house, and everybody knew that in my community, because people that would visit, would have experiences depending if the ghosts like them or not. We also, I grew up in a time where it was okay for me to see spirits. It was not abnormal. It wasn't pathologized, and there were fairies and different elementals that were in communication with my family, also in our land. And so again, this is part of my culture. It was part of my family. It was part of my upbringing. And therefore, I just came into this world that this was how it's supposed to be. Yeah. So yeah. So what happened for me is that I kept opening and opening and opening, because I didn't think there was a glass ceiling that was placed on me from the outside. And then at a certain point, my mother went through her spiritual calling. And so she went through a dark night of the soul, of which I was a part of, because I was her daughter and I was with her all the time. And the end result of this, at the end of it, was that she was called to actually do natural healing with people. And in the Philippines, it's called faith healing. So she would dream of people that will come the next day, without telephones, this was pre-internet days. And she would be told of the hardest cases and what to do naturally with them. And sure enough, the people would come. So I was little. I think she went to the dark night of the soul when I was 7, 8 years old, because I would go to all the pilgrimage sites with my mother, because she was asking for answers. No. So I was very young to know that one can be open to divinity, or however way you want to call it, have a calling, something is being asked of one, and then responding. And it's not necessarily that the opening is there right away. You have to go through a journey sometimes, and my mother went through this journey. And so I saw how she went up and down, and she had mystical experiences and all the things that happened before she even started to heal people. And I think this is important, no? Because I saw as a little girl, you can go up the summit, but as far as you go up the summit, you must also touch the bottoms of the valleys. We can go to the light, but we must also embrace our shadows.
That's a great metaphor for the country too. Yes.
Yes, exactly. So it impressed upon me. Yeah. It impressed upon me. And at the time, because I also went to Catholic school, there was a very different teaching that was there's a different interpretation of the teaching of Jesus that was given through the filter of the Catholic school. Yeah. So I had this side by side. And then my mother started to heal, and I would be with her while she would heal. So sometimes it would so she used the candle. She used the candle to x-ray people. It is a particular way. So she would melt the candle and then she would put it in the water, and it was very much related to, in her faith, Jesus Christ. Yeah. And then it would show what was the cause, what is the solution, and what needs to be done together. So there were 3 different things. No,
kind of divination of sorts.
Yes. Yeah. So this was how she was told she was to do this. No. And I would sit there by the stairs, and sometimes it would be somebody who would be deaf and then would start speaking within the same day. Wow. So miraculous things. No.
Yeah.
Sometimes somebody would come with a tumor, and then my mother would touch it and it would burst and it would drain. And there were also times my mother would come and she would do exorcisms. So I began to help my mother with exorcisms. And so the world of the astrals and the dark was already like part of what this community is for me. It wasn't just like, oh, something in the books, because I could see it. I would hear people's voices change when they were called upon. I had to close the windows. I had to open the windows. I could feel the energies right there.
Wow. I'm just like feeling into how you were born with it, how it was just alive in you, and how natural. Like so many of us have to go pay and have to go get teachers and have to try to remember what's in our bones and then have to make it our own. But you had a very natural induction into your medicine.
It was natural. And also, so within the realm of my mother, she had to go through her own, what would you say? Her own acceptance. And she had a process around her acceptance around this. And then my father, who came from a very different culture than my mother, he was a disbeliever.
So which culture he was from?
My father was from Finland.
Okay, and he was a disbeliever. Okay.
He was a disbeliever. He was what you would consider an atheist. Yeah. Okay. But not only an atheist, but at the time I was a young girl. But he was a believer. He didn't believe in faith healing because he believed more in the medical, the current medical view, and that's the only solution. That's the only way to look at it. So his own paradigms and mythology, personal mythology, was deeply challenged by being married to my mother as well.
And that's not who he thought he married, it sounds like.
No.
So that's been quite a shock. Yeah.
It was quite a shock. Yes. And also to the rest of the family, her brothers and sisters, though her grandfather also had powers. Yeah. And when she was a young child, her grandfather would tell her certain things. So we come from a family where that was just kind of part of it. Sometimes it skips a generation, but it basically travels down the generations. And the way it would exhibit and express itself would vary a little bit differently for each one. But that ancestor line is very strong.
Yeah.
Okay. And I also want to note, because we were talking about the ancestors, my ancestry on my mother's side, we have a lot of shadow. We have to work with a lot of shadow. So a big part of my work in this lifetime with my ancestry is working with those transgenerational, intergenerational, horizontal, and vertical lines.
Can you say what that means to you? Just
yeah. Okay. So so because there was a lot of shadow, and one way it exhibited in my family was addiction. Yeah, alcohol, gambling, uh, um, betrayals of trust, and that went on from generation to generation. But usually we think of intergeneration as only being passed from the mother, the father to the child. But when I say horizontal, you have there's the aunts and the uncles, and there's the cousins. So there's the horizontal line that can also be addressed and healed when we start to share with each other, which I actually had when I went back to the Philippines as an adult again. So that's why I say the horizontal and the vertical.
Thank you.
So yeah, and also I know we are in the United States and Western Europe, we tend to focus more as a current contemporary paradigm of the psychology, mostly based on Freudian, with that. But from this perspective, I'm also introducing that from a shamanic perspective. Not only do we have what is passed on in terms of these functions and ways to survive. I really would rather to call it that. We have different survival mechanisms that we pass on, and then we also pass on the strengths. Yeah, our parents may be very generous, and so we pass that on to our children. Yeah, but we also have what would you call this? We have family curses, no? That we also pass on from generation to generation. And I think this is really important. We don't talk much about it, but we have family curses, we have country curses, curses. And so some families, there's an actual dark portal that's part of that family. So it's the way I look at it personally. It's an opportunity for that family to transmute that portal. So some members of the family may come out as healers, no, but some members of the family may actually go down the dark portal because they all have access to this, but it manifests and expresses in different ways unless we alchemize it.
Can I ask you something about that?
Yeah.
So when you say curse, and that again, I agree, that's not something we talk too much about in this culture. It's more like in the movies or some kind of, Harry Potter, like it's not really understood.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you could differentiate it, say, from a wound or intergenerational trauma. How is that different, or how is it the same?
I think there's multiple layers. So one can because we're energetic beings, no? And certain cultures have a lot more explicit acknowledgement of sorcery. For example, we also have this here in the Western world, but we don't have as explicit an acknowledgement, although we see it in the movies, we see it in Netflix, we see it with all the symbologies and all the numbers, of us basically happening in a lot of occult practices that everybody is under the sway of, because we are actually it's blanketing us. Yeah, it's blanketing our consciousness. So when we have a culture that has an express sorcery, then we can say, oh, you got witchcraft from somebody. And then you also go to the market, the public market, and next to the fish and the vegetables, you would see some herbs that actually will help you take out some of the witchcrafts, or some other kind of amulet that would protect you from the evil eye or the dark spirit coming in. So that would be one vehicle. Yeah. So that's not necessarily like how we look at the wound or trauma. It's I hate you, or somebody pays me to, because they hate the person, or whatever. No, there's an exchange of services, and I have the power to do this, to deliver this curse to somebody, make them feel not well. that would be a curse real time. But then some of these curses can be passed on for the whole family and done generation to generation.
So you're talking about something very intentional and within a cultural understanding that it's possible to do this, and you can pay someone, you can do it yourself. And what do you think about curses that happen unconsciously? Do you believe that we can curse each other and not understand that actually that's what we're doing?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I give an example. So now I'm going to switch a little bit track. Yeah. Because I do see what happens to the actual anatomy energetically. So
Right.
when somebody wants to manipulate another person and the other person doesn't want to agree upon that, their auras intertwine with each other. Yeah. And that most of it is unconscious. Okay. Until people come to a person like me, then I say, okay, this happened. Now we need to go through a process to untangle that. So basically, we all have an aura is not just like, oh, some sweet pink, glow. It's basically our life force, our life force, and we do many, many things. We throw our tendrils when we don't like somebody. We throw our tendrils when we're lusting after somebody. We throw our tendrils when our children are on the other side of the world and we're worried about them.
I know about that.
Yes. So this is it. So when I was a little girl, because my father traveled quite a bit around the world, I became very adept at having my tendrils travel around the world to check into my father. Okay, so there's different ways we can actually sharpen and enhance and cultivate our inherent capacities and abilities. Everybody has this in them. Okay, but sometimes we're not very ethical in the way we do it, consciously or unconsciously. So what happens then in this particular case, like we can just say, I don't like that person. I wish that person so-and-so. That in itself, it's like, we're creator beings. So we basically manifest this and we throw the energy at somebody. Yeah. And we can feel this when we're just even in a party. When somebody throws energy at us, we go, oh, what just happened? No? And it doesn't matter how far you are, because look, I'm in the other side of the United States from you, and yet we're communicating. Yes, there's a computer, there's an internet, but actually we have these capacities in us because we're both physical beings, but we're also energetic. Well, the physical is actually energy. It's a densest form. Matter is a densest form of energy. Yeah. So when we talk about energy workers, we're basically working with all the spectrums of energy, from the lightest to the heaviest. So
So two things. I mean, one, I just want to say I verified that working since the pandemic, working with people online, where at first you think this is just not gonna do it. It's not like being in person. And then you realize the energy field you can feel when your client comes, like, oh, here's the energy field. First they're on the screen, but now we're here together. So there is, I've kind of, it's been very interesting to work online and actually feel the non-localness of the experience.
Okay, so then maybe this might be very helpful right now, because I think it'll be helpful for you. It'll be also helpful for anybody who's listening. Okay.
Yes, and then I have another question.
Okay. Yeah. So now it's so normal for all of us to be going on Facebook, to be working online, to be doing FaceTime with our family and friends. So one of the invitations for anybody who's listening is to really, when they're doing this, is to pull the energy back. So instead of jumping into the screen and all the way on the other side of the world or the country or the bridge, is to actually pull the energy back so you're not jumping out. And this is going to make a radical difference in your own wellness and your health. So these are the different ways we can actually work more ethically, not just with others, but also with ourselves. so that we're not stretching ourselves too thinly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that our life force, our auras are not going to start, you know, like that. But anyways, I just wanted to make sure that if you can experiment with that, others can experiment with it. So then you can see, well, does it feel good? Does it feel okay? This feels strange. Oh, I can actually morph. Yeah. So this is one way we begin to then sharpen these parts of ourselves, no?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing how natural this is for humans and how much so many of us have been cut off from it, and that it seems quote unquote woo woo, and yet it's another sensory experience. It's just more subtle.
That's
And
right.
once you make contact with it, it seems like, how could I have ever not been aware of it? But I remember I was about 22 when my girlfriend introduced me to energy, and I was like, what are you talking about?
Mhm.
And I remember for like the first times I felt energy, I was like, oh, this is real, you know. But before 22, I experienced it probably many times in nature, in Hollywood. But I talked to a number of trees every day.
Mhm.
And when I look back, I'm like, oh, okay, that was there, but I didn't recognize it.
Yeah.
So I think we're reclaiming that vocabulary and that ability and reintegrating our wholeness.
Yeah, and you know, I'm glad we are, because we are really multidimensional beings, and it's not just woo woo.
Yeah.
And we can verify this fact, you know, even in our lives, in our relationships, and for some of us, if we have near death experiences, no, I
Yeah.
mean, we can push it many different ways. Or people that are meditating or praying as a practice, you know, there are certain experiences that come up that actually point to extrasensory experiences, and then points to that we are more than what we see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. and you know, it's really, for me, you know, it's the scientific inquiry. It's a scientific method. You know, you try it. Does it, what do you sense? What is your experience? And then you come up with your own aha moment around that. No,
Yeah.
nobody has to tell you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I loved what you were talking about before in terms of the curse. You're laughing.
Let's go back to the curse. Yeah.
Because I
Okay.
really feel like it's not talked about that often.
Yes.
And my experience is it's part of what keeps people away from working in other realms, because it's perceived as dangerous. And
Mm-hmm.
you know, like anything, there's things that are safer and unsafe, and you need different practices. But I'm curious what you have to say about that, because you know, a lot of people, it's like, okay, well, that's witchcraft, or or I don't want to be cursed. I'm just going to stay away from that whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So first of all, um, often when people go in and they think, oh, uh, my concern is something will be done to me. But to be honest with you, one should also ask the question that my concern would be, I will do something to somebody else, and maybe I am already doing something to somebody else.
Great point.
Yeah. So I just want to like bring this up, because we come from such a dualistic thinking of like uh one way, rather than we are you know, we connect with each other in so many ways. No, so we're just bringing awareness to this. That's all we're doing. It's already happening. In terms of the danger, yeah, I think that maybe the movies have something to do, you know, with conditioning people around the danger. Secondly, I think that depending on the ethical level of somebody, that will also color whatever power they have. Yeah, that's why in many traditions, when you actually study with a teacher, um, they don't want you to focus on the powers, the spiritual powers, the CDs. You know, in Sanskrit they call them the CDs, because you want to develop first a discernment. You want to develop the ability to be calm. You want to develop the ability to see, to discriminate, and when you're wiser, then usually the ethics also come together with it. It's like in Tibetan Buddhism, they say your ethics have to be as fine as a barley flour. Yeah, even in the tantric tradition. Yeah. So, but people have forgotten because people go, oh, I want to have the powers. Yeah, and this is also my concern actually with a lot of energetic teachings, specifically specifically only teaching energetic things, because people develop these powers, but they don't have the ethical basis for it. So I see people becoming sorcerers, not in the service of the good necessarily. So I think that I definitely can see that's been a problem lifelong. It will be a problem in the future. So as long as people, split those, this will happen. Yeah. Some people are born already with with this thread of the abilities, and then depending what also they do, or what other people that were not born with it, but then they cultivate and they enhance and they sharpen, and so this also can develop these CDs. But it's not the foremost goal, because you can get lost in it. Yeah. And I was very, very fortunate, because my teachers very early on saw that I had a lot of abilities. And as I meditated more, I was just, based on what I was saying in my interviews, they can basically, there's a whole mapping system around it, that they cautioned me, which I am so, so thankful for. But also I saw what happened to my mother when I was a little girl. So I made a decision very early on. I made a decision when I was 8 years old. I was in 3rd grade. I made a decision that I'm going to make sure that this lifetime is towards the wisdom current and the love, the compassion, the wisdom, that the powers weren't what I was going to be going after the most. It just so happened to be, as I delve deeper in each different modality that I got into, whether it's spiritual or somatic or whatever, I brought in those abilities. But again, it was always to in the service of healing. It was very clear for me, in the service of healing, because some people would come to me even today and they want a fortune teller, they want a psychic reading, and I would tell people, I'm not interested to do a psychic reading. What my gifts are, it's for the service of healing. But if you want a psychic reader, you have to go someone who is expressly, that's what they do. And so it's an interesting thing. So when it comes to the danger of for oneself when one embarks is to as a practitioner, yeah, because there is one that where you are the receiver, but as a practitioner delving with, let's say, curse, that arena of the curses, yeah, which curses is just one aspect. And if one is not aware of one's shadow as a woman, shadow as this generation, shadow as this culture, shadow as this ethnicity, shadow, then I can become, when that power comes up, that shadow will become even more expressed in a bigger way. So that's really more. So basically, the way I see is that whatever we're doing in this 3D world, when we start to go in the interdimensional, in the transdimensional world, it's the same things, except there's more power. So there's going to be those in those worlds that want to manipulate and want you, it might even say, oh, you kill yourself or you kill somebody. Yeah. So if one doesn't have that groundedness and that stability and that ability to discern and discriminate, one can easily go over one's head. So that's the danger for somebody who's dabbling, and it's not grounded by a body of teaching and a teacher, because that's part of the job of the teacher, is to actually say, you're going too much on the left here, you're going too much on the right, come back, yeah. Now, the danger of somebody doing it to me, because that was the first question. There are people that say to me, how come you can take it and I can't? Yeah. Because I would have clients who would often come with astrals, dark forces. And after some time, they start to take those things out themselves by using the what I say, but they're not successful to take them out. Yeah, this is the feedback. How come you can take it and I can't? Yeah, it can be taught, but again, it's not so simply about the words, because it's about holding a particular field. It's holding a particular boundary. And sometimes we can have dark forces, whether in a form of a curse or a form of an astral or a form of a demon. And we actually have a symbiotic relationship with them. So basically, we made a decision at some point in our life, even, often children that have been abused, something comes in, they make a symbiotic relationship, some kind of agreement. And for some people, that astral will be with them the whole life, but they meet people like me or other people, then there can be an intervention. I personally don't just take them out, but when there is a syncretic, symbiotic relationship, then I specifically address this explicitly with the person so that they know that agreement came in at the time they needed to survive. But that parasitic relationship is no longer important now or essential right now. So for them to move on in their soul evolution, they need to let go. Yeah, thank this being and let go. And also that particular disembodied being also need to go into their next phase of their evolution. So I like to also assist them if they so wish, because we are living in a free will universe, no? So I don't know if it kind of touched the different aspects of your question.
It definitely does. I mean, there's so much to it, and I know we're just touching the very tip of it. You can just hear when you name the astral, the demon, and you're like, oh my God, there's just so much here. I'm wondering, do you teach people these things, or
I do. What often happens is that because I have long-term clients, and over time they ask questions, and then it becomes like almost like an apprenticeship. Yeah. So as they ask, then I share what is relevant for them to occupy their structure and then be in right relation now forward. So it's, instead of like coming just from the mind, I find that when it can actually truly impregnate the whole totality of the person, then I go, okay, now it's time to go that direction. Yeah, this time. But like you said, it's so much.
Yeah.
But one of the dangers for me that I found, because some people come to me and they think they will understand only from the head. And I feel like we have this opportunity because we are incarnated in a human body. We have this opportunity to truly let it soak in that every single subatomic particle in our cells can have this knowingness. That's different than just knowing in the mind. And at the current time, especially, my sense, because I'm a seer, so I experience so many things. There are so many disembodied beings that have never had a body, or it's been a very, very long time. So they have actually been inhabiting many human bodies now and experiencing what it's like to have a body. So I'm saying this because it's like how precious it is to actually experience ourselves in a body. So when I teach, I tend to do that, where I'm like, okay, let it sink in. Like even when I've taught workshops of therapists around boundaries. Yeah, I would deliberately, when I deliberately would take 2 weeks in between, so that they could practice what I taught the first week, because I want them to really, I don't want it just to be a intellectual masturbation of, bringing in more information they can't use. I want them to use the information because they need it when they're actually there with their clients and their patients, So again, because I live with my teachers. So I also have this way of teaching because I live with my teachers. It wasn't about lectures. It was like, I'd be like walking in the lake with my teacher, and my teacher would say, look how clear you can see the mountain right on the lake. And my teacher would say, that's how your mind. Yeah.
How beautiful.
So this is also, I think, how I also teach, so there is this opportunity. So I've taught workshops where, it's kind of more the traditional, how we think of workshops. I'm just not such a fan of that type because of the gravity, the gravity of it. And I think my when I was at CIS, one of my jobs when I was going to grad school was I would assist all the different facilitators in psychospiritual work for the weekends. And I found that many of them did not know how to hold the psychic space of the transformation. They knew how to break people. They knew how to open people. So they had the part of the spiritual technology that opens and crashes, but they didn't know. They didn't know, and they weren't there to stick around when somebody opens and to actually hold and integrate. And that piece I actually have. And so when I would be assisting in these workshops, I could just feel that part was missing. And so my bias then became, one has to be careful. One just doesn't do a Kundalini workshop for a weekend or 4 hours and then expect, it's just going to be bliss. Somebody's going to actually have their chakras open, and the Kundalini energy is going to go one way, and they're going to get in a little bit in a loop, and then many problems can happen. But it can be assisted so that the transformation can really go in a way that is more smoothly and not only crashing everything like a volcano. So my own filtering mechanisms were influenced by what I saw in the Bay Area and the way things were being taught.
It's a kind of like drive-through fast food, right? It's kind of picked out of some very profound teachings in a very short amount of time.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody's ready, that can be amazing. But it's also like some people they need a jackhammer to break something and be an opening, yeah. But some people they actually just need a feather.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm one of those people. I just need a feather. So I actually represent that part. But then, because I live in the Bay Area, I study in the Bay Area. No, I was in this. I had to find my way in a lot of jackhammer approaches. And I had to learn how to then to say for myself, my yes here is my no, or my no is my yes, whichever. And I think everybody has a different.
I'm a little confused by that. Your yes is your no, and your no is your yes.
Yeah, so let's say if we're in a workshop, and or even in a session with somebody, yeah. And so let's take a session with somebody. Somebody's in a session and you're going to be touched by somebody, but somebody's coming already and feeling very, very fragile. Yeah. The inside, the psyche is really saying, I really don't need to be touched right now to do more digging. But I do want to be witnessed and acknowledged, and just have somebody put their blanket around me. And my session might be, my whole hour session might just be that. But so that's what I mean by the yeses and the nos, yeah. And it requires, in this particular case, when somebody is more fragile, it requires like the therapist or the healer or the teacher to be okay that that's the medicine. That not to have the agenda like, I'm going to have to go deeper and deeper and deeper. Yeah. So, but in a workshop situation where the teacher are teaching many people, part of the learning of a student is to be able to say, I'm not going to go there, or I'm going to go halfway there, or I had this profound thing, but maybe I'm only going to share a little bit of verbally because I still need to tend that part of me and know. Yeah. But these are like all the nuances, but it has to do with self-respect, permission given to ourselves, not having to take care of others, not being a people pleaser. So we go back again to what are the condition responses of survival mechanisms or traumatic, result, so it's all this interplay that's happening. And it just, some of the things, like I said, it's I've been doing this for a long time. I'm in my 50s now, so I've seen different permutations in myself and in others. So the medicine really, it's so particular and so unique to the individual, and the medicine of one being can vary within their lifetime.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what I'm hearing you saying is learning to just really listen deeply and honor what you hear.
Well, there's that part, but the thing is, for some people, that was what was taken away as part of the separation, yeah,
Right.
in the early life.
Right.
And so when one doesn't think one can give oneself permission because one was never given permission, or when one actually did that, it was dangerous. Somebody was threatened.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever those things are coupled, yeah, coupled together, so when people become adults, they show up. So it could be like what we see a lot now, yeah. Oh, if I only do this and I comply to this, then I will be safe. I will not be a target. This is a trauma response of a child.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very common, but we're seeing it collectively. Yeah. But the thing is, we don't have that awareness, most of us. As a trauma therapist, I see that. I saw it right away, because this is, and also I as a Feldenkrais practitioners, I can look at somebody in the body just walking on the street, and I can say a lot about it because that's part of my training. Mm-hmm. And that's not even energetic. That's just a somatic. You can see it. So then, how do we go about healing? Yeah, because we can see, but then how do we go with actually applying the medicine so we can move through the cycle?
Yes. So so remember before we got on the call, I said, remember, I'm going to let this be alive and real, and if anything shows up in real time. So I'm just going to share, like, I feel slightly overwhelmed.
Oh yeah, that's a lot. Yes.
And like a need to just kind of slow down a little bit. So I just want to take a breath. I appreciate everything you're saying, and you have so much wisdom and so much experience, but I can just feel like, okay, let's just take a moment, and just an integration moment to take a moment. And I'm just kind of dropping in, and also just inviting you, and just to take a moment to integrate and allow there to be space, but also just to listen to spirit. And if there's anything that spirit really wants us to speak about, that we just listen for that too. And just also the people who are listening, to give their nervous systems a moment to slow down and just to feel what's moving after so much has been spoken and touched on, deeply personal and collective and transpersonal. Just to take a moment to let this settle and move through us. Yeah, and each person able to just notice what got touched in them, what part of the teaching, what part of the challenges, what part of the traditions. Yeah. Yeah, and so I just want to move slowly back in, and I'm aware of being interested in how this applies to the collective, and aware that you've done a lot of one-on-one healing, you've done group healing, aware that you're traveling the United
Mhm.
States after very difficult time in the country that is not over, but we're not at an acute place that we were. It doesn't mean we're anyway near
Mhm.
out. So that's where my curiosity is leading. And if you want to go there, great. And if there's something else alive for you,
Okay.
yeah.
Um, uh, a few things. First of all, while we were pausing, yeah, um, the different beings, yeah, uh, unseen beings also want to say, let's balance the sorcery and the curses with the benevolence
Mm,
that is also present,
thank you.
yeah, and that everybody can call upon that benevolence, and whether it's in a form that they're familiar with already or not, whether it's Mother Mary uh, or Krishna, or Great Spirit, as in manifesting as an eagle or a plant, um, or the ancestors, one's ancestors. And one's ancestors is not only one's grandmother, it can be 50 generations back, you know, that they're basically saying, you can call on us, you can invite us, you can have a personal relationship with us, and we're willing and wanting to help.
Beautiful. I'm so glad you named that. So
Okay.
important. So
Yeah.
important. Yes.
So that we just want to anchor that, so
Yes.
people really have the tool themselves. They develop your personal relationship with that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
And
Okay.
you and I are both available to support in that.
Exactly.
Yes. And
So
that is so much bigger than the curses.
so much bigger. So that's why, that was like really really like important. Yeah.
Thank you.
um the second part is traveling across the country. uh what happened was, I was living in a cottage in our village, and then my landlady decided to sell her land and move someplace else. So I had the option to rent another place or to do something different. And I felt that I wanted to travel across the country and to listen to the stories of people as I'm moving across the country. So basically, um, there had been so uh, there had been so much division in the last years, especially, and I had my heart had been broken by that, and a part of me wanted to be a bridge.
Mhm.
Yeah, I didn't know what that would mean, but that was my intention that I placed there. So I basically sold and gave away most of my things, and I just save a few things and put it in the storage. So then I can just decide, okay, let's be open-ended about it. So that was at the end of April. So I've been traveling across the country, going the southern way. Yeah. And I'm now in North Carolina in Asheville. So that I'm basically going pretty slowly. Yeah. In terms of when you think of traveling across the country, most people take, I don't know, 3 or 4 days to drive across. And so I've taken several months to do that. And and one of the things that the division also laid, because I was in Marin, in the San Francisco area, and there was a very big divide between the Democrats and the Republicans. That's how it expressed itself. Um, and so I was drawn to learn more about what the South had to teach me that I didn't know. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I had no idea what I'd never gone. I've never traveled by land east of the Rockies.
Mhm.
Yeah, I've flown to other places in the East Coast, but I always was with a boyfriend or a family, so I was always part of a group. So there was a certain insulation. Yeah.
Mhm.
That's different than me traveling alone as a woman of color
Mhm. Mhm.
overland. So that were some of the challenges I had to face. And and how would I meet those? Yeah. Those conversations. Yeah? So in addition to those conversations, I also had a lot of conversations from different people, like when I was in Arizona, uh, I had breakfast with a Pueblo elder. I had breakfast with with a Navajo elder.
Mm.
So you know it, and it was these were all spontaneous, by the way.
Sure. Yeah.
Very spontaneous. And so as I began to travel, I would be in a gas station, and the person who's putting gas in the next stall would say something to me, and I would say something, and a whole conversation would ensue, and he would say, "Oh, you must go over here too."
Mm-hmm.
And that over there happens to be ancestral lands of certain people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And me being who I am, I would be driving, and I would enter, literally would be entering roads, and all of a sudden I could feel I've entered a portal. And the spirits of the land would speak to me. The ancestral spirits would speak to me. The poakas, you know, the sorcerers would speak to me of this particular land and people.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just went with it, because I'm like, okay, you want me to go where? So I will go, and then I would do my ceremony. So I have an ancestral drum. You can see that my drum has lost its skin, but I still use the drum because this is my ceremonial drum. And you can see I have, you know, so, so I would go to these different places I've never heard of before. And sometimes very ancient villages over 1,000 years old. People, you know, people, unless you're invited, you're not welcome. So I could feel all the energies that were there, but I was so one pointed that I came here because the ancestors told me this must be done. Yeah. Prayer must be held here. Okay. The different direction has to be brought up again. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and sometimes it was so I consider this earthwork now. Yeah. So we go from the one-on-one healings I was doing to the group teachings to doing earthwork.
Mm.
And sometimes on my journey, I would be sent someplace. Like I was sent to one place, and I entered middle of nowhere. Yeah. I entered a little gift shop, and as we were just saying hello, again, I'm always amicable with people. I'm just curious, no? And then the person started to say, "Oh, uh, da 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 da. I've been praying to my ancestors to send somebody.
Mm.
It must be you."
Mm.
Yeah, so things like this would happen. So I would then go, "Well, what do you need help with?" Yeah. So you know, like I would do in a session, except people don't know who I am. No,
Yeah.
they don't know. They would just feel like, oh. And so in this particular case, her granddaughter was murdered when the granddaughter was 3 years old. And so there needed to be healing intergenerationally so that the mother and the other rest of the family can move on now. And then the young 3-year-old as a soul can move on to the next level. Yeah. So then I would be the communicator, the medium, yeah, of which information can go back and forth, and widen the conversation, and add to the places that she didn't think needed healing because she thought it was only this way. And so things like this would happen. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes I would be sent to certain places, and I would go, oh my, you know, but it would be, and even like one other place I was sent to, even the cats, the eyes of the cats, and there were so many cats. The cats were basically there to help the people that were living there. So when I came to this place, there was like paramedics were right there, and a woman was just beaten by her lover. Yeah. And so this is what I'm saying. It's not like I'm traveling across and I only stay at nice places. No, I'm sent specific places to do some healing, but it doesn't necessarily look like a one-on-one. It could just be my particular frequency is needed at a particular time to assist that collective. Yeah. And in this particular case, I could see that the cats that were living there were actually there specifically to help the humans.
It's such an incredible thing to step outside of our schedules and to be completely available and to let spirit guide, because literally you can do that in one day. You can
Yes.
decide not to get in your car that day or take a bus and just spend the day listening
Hmm.
and have magical synchronistic experiences.
Exactly.
I think it's so important.
It's very important because you go out of the time space continuum, and basically the Akashic record opens, because that's really, it's literally available anyways right here.
Mhm.
and and because I just said yes, but my intention was a yes to begin with. And so this was happening every place I went. So after and again, it's the same thing if I was to go to San Francisco. Yeah, it could be a day, like you said, or 4 hours. It doesn't matter. But it's like when one has the intention that says, let me be a vehicle to serve.
Yes.
And so I have particular gifts, and that was a filter of which that. But again, it's simply like, even to be an anchoring presence, even to be an anchoring presence in a situation that was 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 disheveled. Yeah.
Mhm.
So these were the things that were happening. But it was also the other way, where I would like go someplace, and I would go, oh, I wish the people here were friendlier and I could learn more from them.
Mm.
So I would talk to spirit and I would say this, oh, this is it kind of hurts my heart that people are not as friendly to do this. And then within 5 minutes, somebody will show up of that particular group and would say, let's have breakfast together. It was really quite
Oh,
fascinating. So it wasn't just like I come into a place and I know, I'm also vulnerable. I'm also impressionable. And even when an invitation is given, I also have to make a choice to accept. So there is, each step of the way,
yes. It's a
there
process. Yeah.
there's an exchange, that happens. So that was like what happened when I was in Indian country, yeah.
Mm.
And then when I went to Texas, something else happened. When I went to Louisiana, oh my God. Oh my God, Louisiana,
But before you go to those stories, you could probably write an incredible book about this, the amount of stories you have. But we have about 10
Oh,
minutes,
yes. Okay.
and I would love to hear.
Tell me.
I would just love to hear, what you're talking about, the divide and how you experienced it here in the Bay Area and what's changed in your perception having traveled across the country.
Okay.
What understandings do you have? What can you bring back to us who are.
So traveling across the country, one of the things, so I spent a lot of time in nature, but I also went to museums along the way. So I was able, let's say, I went to Mobile, Alabama, and went to the museum there and walk around town. Living in the Bay Area for over 20 years and having grown in California, also for much longer, um, there's a particular version the media speaks of the South,
Mm.
and it's usually not very good, or there's an absence of material. Like I had no idea Mobile, Alabama is actually a really nice place.
Actually,
That's not
my sister-in-law's mother lived there, so
okay. So, but I had no idea.
yeah.
So, and it's the same thing with Atlanta, Georgia.
Hmm.
Yeah. Uh, and basically, I got to see a little bit more what was what really were the reasons during the Civil War, rather than from the South, also not just from the North,
Mm.
because so much has been added to it, then distilled as a Californian, and how I was educated here.
Mm.
And when I was going through talking with different people and also looking at museums, I kept going, I wish I knew that. I wish my education was broader. I wish, because I could see the seeds of division actually were from that. The biases, yeah? The biases, like as a Californian, I was educated to be biased against the South. As a Californian, I was educated to think that I know the answers, that I know not only the answers, that I know what's best for everybody else. And so I was put in my place when I would listen to people actually not knowing I'm Californian would say exactly that thing. We're like, oh yeah, the Californians, they think they know what's good for everybody.
It's I will cop to that. I mean,
Yeah.
I've been humbled, but
Yeah, no, but this is really important, because like that was the thing for me. I'm like, oh, of course, at that point, I just like, let me just listen and see, because I was seeing that, no. So that was like the balance I needed. Yeah. And when I was, let's say, in Texas, in a really, really small place, and they had the once a year parade, when everybody around kind of goes into this town. And I was so surprised to see so many biracial children, black and white biracial children. And what I was told in California, Texas is not like that. It's opposite. And I was like, my God, I've seen more biracial children in this parade of people coming to visit than I have seen in California.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm like, oh my God, what is this? Okay, so those were like the eye openers for me. I'm like, oh, what else? What else is here? No, what else is here? Then the other point is, as a single woman traveling, when I went to a small town in Texas, I bought a piece of land there, a small piece of land, and I just bought it online, and I thought that I would just see what that's about. And what I noticed is that people had a lot of biases about me being single woman without a husband. And I thought, whoa, this is 2022. Yeah, that was my thing, because I'm like, I've lived alone. As an adult, I've traveled all over the world by myself. And a guy is telling me that, it might be better if you might get what you want faster if you tell the guy that you have a husband rather than you're just the only one who's wanting the service. So I'm like, what? So that was like, I wasn't expecting that. Yeah. And the small town mentality you can find everywhere. Now we were in a small town also where we were, but I think we didn't necessarily wanted to maintain everything as it is, like in the town that I was in. And so that was surprising and shocking for me. And people were not necessarily, some people were actually expressively intimidating in their actions towards me. So that was like, oh, and I'd been to Texas before. I'd been, Texas with an ex-boyfriend, and we visited his family, and I never ever got that.
And you were with a man, though. You're alone.
I was with a man. This time I was alone. And like I said, I was like, whoa. So then I had to go back and go, okay, when I was in India back then, and I was traveling alone, what kind of experiences did I have as opposed to when I was traveling with a man? And I really thought we were way more ahead in that respect. So it was a balance. I had to really adjust, and I had to go, but I still spoke up. I had to know how to have more finesse in my talking with people, that I didn't, because I wanted to get my service. But at the same time, I'm like, I'm the one who wants this. You need to talk to me about it. Yeah. Which went up against. Yeah. So again, like, because I think in the Bay Area, I'm used to going to the city, watching theater by myself at night.
Right. A different culture.
So I had to then really go, okay, even though it's one USA, there are many cultures within this one USA. And I think that part of what I felt like the bias was in California as a Californian was an expectation that the whole United States would have the Bay Area type culture. So I'm owning that, and I'm also sharing it here because I think that there's something to that. Yeah. So I had to adjust. I had to listen. But I still spoke up. I spoke up when people, I was certain places and people did something aggressively towards me. And if I was within an institution, I made a report on it. So
Mhm.
I did not let whatever intimidation to take away who I am as a being in a body of a woman in this color. I went ahead because I go, whoa. And this is part of the healing actually of some of the collective that
Mhm.
happened in some of this land that could not happen because the people that were living there, the original people living there, they didn't have that.
Mhm.
Yeah. So there was a rest by me actually doing that. There was an earthwork of an ancestral peace that was occurring.
Yeah.
So
I
I just,
love
this is like really important, I think, because we cannot divorce our current time from all of that happened as well, and the future as well, because it's like one timeline. No, really.
I love what you're saying. It's a great place to end because you're speaking about the full integration of all these layers, including empowered action, understanding your identity, how it intersects with where you are, and the energetics and the spirit of place. And, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
so I just love it because it just grounds everything you're saying, it,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And includes all the layers of reality at the same time.
It
Yeah.
includes, yeah, it includes all the layers, and that we have choices,
Mm,
and we can actually step into those choices,
mm,
not just through for our ancestors backwards, but for our children forward.
mhm.
And this is very, very clear for me. Yeah, very clear. And so I really appreciate your questions, that you're able to also, that you're leading me to bring this out
Mm,
also. Yeah, because it's been mostly a solitary journey, and I would share every now and then, but sometimes I felt that the Facebook was not really the right place with such complexity,
mm,
you know
mhm.
and I didn't want anybody to use what I say to feed the division, because I'm really here to help the unification. Yeah.
Yes, me too. I'm
Yeah.
with you on that path.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so
Oh.
much. What a joy. What a joy to speak
Uh,
with you. Yeah.
likewise, and I'm so glad we made this happen. Thank you for having your channel to and inviting just different people and including myself, so that some of these voices can also come out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So thank you.
Mm,
Much love.
mm, okay.
Thank you. Okay. All right.
Here.
Bye bye.
Bye.